Hi, I'm Mallory Pollard, and this is the slave trade in Brazil. The slave trade, this map shows you about how many African Americans were brought to Brazil. It shows you that more were brought to Brazil than the U.S. Approximately 4 million slaves were brought to Brazil. The slave trade started as early as 1530, and it started because the Portuguese ship accidentally landed here because it was going somewhere else and got blew off track and landed here. And first of all, the Native Americans were the only ones on here in Brazil, and they were officially the first slaves. They died off because they weren't used to working with this many people, and they weren't used to working that long. That and all the diseases that the people brought over killed them off, so then they needed more people to work their sugar plantations, so that's when they started bringing on African Americans. This is the first primary document. The common punishments in Brazil, they were atrocious. They were all very bad. Most of the slaves' bodies were always covered in lash wounds. The quote from here is, "The culprit is fastened to a cart and there receives 200 or 300 lashes. The mangled flesh is then cut, and cayenne pepper and salt are put into the wounds." They pretty much tied up people and lashed them for 9 days straight was a common punishment. And they put the cayenne pepper and salt into the wounds to make it hurt even more. Also, they tied slaves to posts to help and held them over ants' nests all night. That way they just are pretty much just tortured all day. They were even tortured as they slept. Some slaves were lucky and got houses to sleep in, which is families, but they also had many that were just buildings with just 500 to 100 men just crammed in there during the night. There were many devices used that people would just do just to hurt the slaves. The slave owners did not want religion. They wanted all the power to them. They didn't want the slaves forming groups and going against them. They didn't want them believing in anything else but them. They wanted the slaves' attention on them, and that's all. The picture on the left just shows the slaves being tied up and beaten with, I think, the corkscrew thing. And then the right picture is just the slaves in Libsyn, just how they lived. This is the second primary document. Were the slaves helpless? Yes, they constantly got brutally beaten, sometimes for absolutely nothing. They couldn't have anything to themselves. They couldn't control anything that they wanted to do. They hardly ever got privacy. The quote was, "I have observed someone leave his house and steal away to visit an acquaintance," which pretty much means they couldn't do anything without sneaking it or not letting the slave owners see. They usually were not cared for. Some of them didn't eat, and if they did eat, it was usually a little bit. They had no say-so in anything, and they usually could not defend themselves. Present Brazil in feudal times in Europe. Feudal times in Europe has crossed me, and I could not forbear comparing with them the present state of the interior of Brazil. And then it says, all these circumstances combined tend to render the similarity very greatly, which means there's a lot of similarities and differences from now and a long time ago. This is just like a picture of slaves kind of like forming a community and actually like doing something they want and not what the slave owner does. Modern Brazil, the slave trade is how African Americans got here, which pretty much means without the slave trade, we might not even have African Americans in there, or if they did, they'd got here a different way. So by having the slave trade, it pretty much shaped Brazil as it is. It brought over many of the cultures and religions and everything else that there is today. So that's all I have for you today.